Shadows behind a perfect door. They always seemed like the perfect family. Beaming photos on social media, smiles, a house with a white porch in the suburbs of Charleston, 2 children, Emily and Josh. Evan called Clara the greatest gift of fate, and every evening she thanked God for her husband, who loves his children, brings flowers for no reason and laughs, stroking her hair. Back then, no one suspected that one day this story would become completely different, about pain, intrigue, hatred and revenge. The perfect picture. Their house always smelled of cinnamon, fresh pastries, and paint, a mix of cozy family warmth and creative clutter. There were lanterns on the white porch, which Clara had painted herself with acrylic. There are her illustrations on the walls. Puppies in hats, good-natured dragons, and watercolor flowers. The children called the house fabulous, and it was no exaggeration, every corner breathed with her hands and her heart. Clara loved to create warmth. Not from purchased accessories, but from things she put her heart into. Embroidered pillows, family calendars with small drawings in front of each day, postcards on the refrigerator, everything was her work. She was soft. The kind of woman who always feels safe around her. The one who listens, understands, smiles warmly, not with her lips. Evan, her husband, was the opposite, energetic, confident, with that smile that was adored by colleagues, neighbors, a saleswoman at a local supermarket, and even the children's school principal. He was the kind of man who could endear himself without even doing anything on purpose. Always fit, always collected, always smelling a little of expensive coffee and office air conditioning. When they met 7 years ago, Clara fell in love with his confidence, his lightness, and the way he laughed at his own mistakes. How he held her hand when she was scared. The way he looked at her, as if she were all that was good in the world. And for many years he was just like that. Caring, attentive, sincere. But lately, there was something about him that didn't fit into that perfect picture. Clara noticed how his smile became different. Not missing, no. She remained outwardly. But the spark that used to make her heart beat faster has disappeared. Now it was as if the smile was zipped up, neat, even, but empty. He started staying late at work more often. At first, for an hour. Then 2. Then to that "don't wait, go to bed," which made her shudder. A lot of projects. He said. Next week's release. We have a new employee, she doesn't understand anything, we have to explain everything. He said it calmly, matter-of-factly, as if nothing special had happened. But Clara felt that something was changing. She noticed cold, short answers to simple questions. I've noticed how irritable he gets if she asks too much. How he sighs if the children distract him in the evening. And most of all, she noticed the phone. Previously, he could lie anywhere, in the kitchen, on the couch, in the hallway. The screen was always open, and notifications arrived with her. Now his phone was always facing down. Always blocked. Sometimes in do not disturb mode. And every time he turned it down, something inside Clara shrank. But she pushed the thoughts away. She chanted to herself like a mantra. He's tired. It's stressful. He just burns out at work. I do it myself. She told herself this every evening, quietly, closing her eyes. Because the alternative was too scary. Because the perfect picture of their lives should not have cracked. Not now. Not like that. But even a perfect painting can hide a shadow. If the wrong light falls on it. Breaking point. Marilyn. She showed up at the office in early autumn, when the leaves in Seattle turned fiery and the air smells of rain and coffee. Marilyn was not like Clara. Everything about her was different, from the way she spoke to the way she looked at people. She was confident, bright, and knew how to enter a room as if it were her stage. She had long dark hair, carelessly gathered in a hairpin, bright red lipstick, too bold for a strict office, and the look of a woman who is used to getting what she wants. She came to the position of project analyst, new to the team, inexperienced in corporate systems, but incredibly charismatic. Evan was supposed to bring her up to speed. He didn't know that this was the beginning of the end. At first, everything was innocent. He explained the processes to her, showed her the documents, and helped her figure out the projects. She listened attentively, asked a lot of questions, sometimes too personal. Do you have a family? Does the wife work? Are you happy? Evan answered easily. He was used to socializing. Used to like it. Marilyn laughed at his jokes, loudly, sincerely, or too sincerely. Colleagues noticed, but did not attach importance. Then the little things appeared. The most dangerous little things. She started touching him, as if by accident. To straighten his sleeve with her hand, pat his shoulder, take the flash drive so that their fingers touched. She often leaned too close to look at the charts on his monitor. Sometimes he could smell her perfume, cold as the night air and cloying as sweet champagne. The smell began to haunt him. In the elevator. In the hallway. Sometimes even at home. One evening, when the office was almost empty, Marilyn lingered at his desk. You look tired, she said softly. Are you tired of work or of life? Evan grinned, hiding his annoyance. From work, of course. She didn't believe it. He could see it in her eyes. Your smile isn't real. Definitely not today. It stung him. He wasn't used to anyone noticing cracks so accurately. Clara saw it at home, but tried not to talk. Colleagues just didn't look deeper. But Marilyn was watching. And I saw it. The next day she came with coffee, the kind he likes. No sugar. Almond milk. Double espresso. I just guessed, she smiled, noticing his surprise. This drink is usually chosen by men who think too much and sleep too little. He laughed. It was the first time in a long time that laughter was real. Then she started texting him after work. Asking about projects, sending memes, short voicemails with jokes. Nothing intimate. But something is too personal. He answered, at first rarely, then more often. He liked the attention. He liked the feeling that someone could see his tension, his tiredness, his understatement. For the first time in a long time, he felt. Not light, no. It's like a dangerous adrenaline rush, like in my youth. Just a colleague, he told himself. But deep down I knew. This is no longer just a colleague. Psychologically, he was vulnerable. Evan loved Clara. But he felt unnoticed, not because she had stopped loving him, but because their lives had turned into an endless cycle. Children, work, household chores, lack of sleep. He didn't realize that Clara was as tired as he was. That she was trying to be gentle, not because it was easy for her, but because she was afraid of losing his support. Marilyn, on the other hand, gave him what he lacked. A sense of novelty. A secret. A look in which he was more than just a husband and a father again. A subtle crack in his marriage appeared here. But so far, no one has seen it. Not him. Not Clara. Not even the kids. Only the one who created this crack. Marilyn. And one evening, at a corporate dinner, she took a step that became the point of no return. Corporate dinner. The corporate dinner was held in an expensive restaurant in downtown Seattle, with panoramic windows overlooking the night city and twinkling lights on the water. Evan didn't want to go, but he couldn't refuse. His department was used to celebrating releases noisily, with pathos, with glasses that were never empty. Clara stayed at home with the children. She kissed him before leaving, straightened his shirt collar, and said, "You're especially handsome today." Evan smiled. But that smile was no longer for her. There was a festive atmosphere in the restaurant. Laughter, clinking glasses, vivid conversations. The music was too loud, and the lights were slightly dimmed, just the way people who have something to hide like it. Marilyn was the last to arrive. And she walked in as if she were stepping onto a stage for the first time, which she had been rehearsing for a long time. She was wearing a black dress that barely touched her knees, with a plunging neckline at the back and shiny earrings that sparkled like raindrops. The colleagues turned around. Some exchanged jokes. But her gaze was only directed at one person. At Evan. He felt something constrict inside him. Something bad. Something is right in the wrong place. She sat down next to him, not directly next to him, but close enough for him to smell her scent, to see the sheen of her lipstick, to hear the whisper of her breath as she bent over. "You're tense today," she said softly, so that no one could hear. "I'm just tired," he replied mechanically. "Fatigue can be different," she said softly, leaning closer. "You're tired of life, Evan." "Not from work." Before he could answer, someone raised a toast, glasses clinked, and everyone laughed. But Marilyn's words remained. They hung between them like a mystery. They hardly talked openly at dinner, no need. The looks were more eloquent. He caught her with his eyes in the reflection of the window. She was giving him short, quick glances, as if checking on him. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" he thought. And that was the biggest problem. Later, when they had drunk enough wine to dissolve their fears, but not to the point of losing control, the manager suggested going to a karaoke bar nearby. Almost the entire department agreed. Evan hesitated. He wanted to go home. "I wanted to go to Clara. I wanted to feel the familiar warmth, not this strange excitement." But he went. And that was his first real yes to the abyss. The karaoke bar was noisy, cramped, and smelled of tobacco and sweet cocktails. People sang out of tune, but they laughed sincerely. The music was loud. The words are blurred. And the distance between Evan and Marilyn is negligible. She sat next to him, and sometimes their feet touched. She was leaning into his ear to say something, and her hair was tickling his neck. He was pulling away, but too slowly. Too insecure. His inner barrier was shifting millimeter by millimeter. When everyone ran out to dance to another chaotic hit, Evan went to breathe, on a small open balcony. It was cool there, and I could hear the noise of the street and the distant hum of music. He stood holding on to the railing, trying to figure out what was happening to him. He was thinking about Clara. About the children. About the house with flashlights. The smell of cinnamon. And I felt ashamed. He was overwhelmed. "I'm playing with fire. That's not right. We have to stop." But when he heard the soft sound of the door opening behind him, he didn't even turn around. He already knew who it was. Marilyn approached him in silence. Her heels clicked lightly on the floor. I stopped next to him, too close. He felt the warmth of her hand on his back, even though she wasn't touching him. "You're running from me, Evan," she whispered. He couldn't find the words. "I'm not the enemy," she said softly. "I just see you. The real one. Tired. Misunderstood. Lonely." Her voice was too warm. Too penetrating. Too dangerous. He turned to her, he wanted to say no, he wanted to put an end to it. But she was already looking at him as if she knew he wouldn't leave. She touched his arm. "With your fingers, easily, confidently, slowly." And this meager contact was the click that destroyed the last defensive walls. He knew he had to back off. To leave. Turn around. Call my wife. But he didn't do it. He was standing. He looked at Marilyn. At her eyes. On the lips. And she came even closer, blocking out the whole world. And at that moment, the first, real, irrevocable one, she kissed him. Softly. Briefly. But as if she knew. It would be enough. And he didn't stop her. It wasn't a long, passionate kiss. It was a decision. Point. A marker after which there is no way back. When he pulled away, fear, shame, weakness, and desire flashed in his eyes. "This is wrong," he whispered. "The wrong things are the most honest," she replied. And she smiled. The smile of a man who has just won. The first lie. Evan came home after midnight. He opened the door quietly so as not to wake the children. He took off his jacket and hung it carefully on a hook. His movements were practiced, taut, as if he had practiced them on the way. The house smelled of vanilla. There was a plate covered with foil on the kitchen table. Clara had left dinner for him. Warmed up. Warm. She always did that. He felt something constricting inside him. Clara came out of the bedroom, sleepy, disheveled, in soft pajamas. She gave him a tired but warm smile. "You're late, Dot," she said softly. "Is everything okay?" Here it is. The simplest phrase. The most common question. The first time he could say everything. But Evan chose to lie. "Yes, we were delayed." He looked away. "We discussed the release. You know how it is." He didn't say that his lips still remembered someone else's taste. That his heart was still beating faster than usual. He didn't know if his hands were shaking from shame or adrenaline. Clara looked at him a little longer than usual. As if she was looking for something. It was as if she felt it. But she just nodded. "I was warming up dinner. Do you want to?" She reached out to hug him, a familiar, gentle movement. He pulled away almost imperceptibly. Not abruptly. Not rude. But that's enough. And she noticed. Her hand froze in the air. She smiled out of the corner of her lips, the kind of smile that says, "I understand everything, but I still love you." That night, Clara couldn't sleep for a long time. Evan was lying next to her, facing the wall, as if building an invisible boundary between them. She mentally reviewed the day. Words. Tone. His eyes. He wasn't here. Even now, he was nearby, he was somewhere far away. Probably tired. It was her first attempt to justify him. The first of many. And in the morning it got even worse. He woke up before she did. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at my phone. I took off the screen as soon as she moved. SMS. Short. At the bottom of the screen, like a flash. "Marilyn. Are you asleep?" He quickly swiped up, hiding the notification. Clara saw out of the corner of her eye. But she pretended not to. A subtle pain pierced his chest. The one that cannot be recognized by anyone. Especially for myself. Evan left for work too quickly. And in the evening he wrote. "I'll be back later. An urgent meeting." She believed. She wanted to believe. But Evan wasn't in the meeting at the time. He was in Marilyn's rented apartment, small, modern, empty, with the smell of her perfume and the last glass of cheap wine. Their second meeting was no longer accidental. He came knowing where he was going. She opened the door, smiling, as if she knew he couldn't stop. "You're back," she said softly, as if stating a fact. "It's a mistake, Dot," he whispered. But his step forward said the opposite. And cheating was no longer a moment. Not by accident. It's a recurring ritual. Tuesday, process optimization. Thursday, meeting with partners. Sometimes it was Saturday, when Clara and the children went to visit their parents. The phone was always facing down. Evan started taking a shower immediately after coming home. He stopped hugging Clara spontaneously. "I stopped talking about my job. I stopped being around, for real." Betrayal entered his life quietly, like a fog. And just as quietly, she began to destroy everything around her. But the cracks in the perfect picture could not remain unnoticed. And Clara felt it first. Her intuition was waking up like an animal that had been caged for years. Cracks. Clara, the silence that screams. The house has become different. Clara couldn't explain it in words, there were no obvious signs, nothing concrete. But she could feel the change on her skin, on her breath, in the silence between them. Previously, home evenings were filled with small sounds. His laughter at a funny video, her rustling brushes, childish questions, to which he always paid attention. Now there is only silence. Deaf. Dense. A silence in which there are innuendos. At night, Clara tossed and turned, feeling like the bed next to her remained cold for a long time. Evan fell asleep late, came to bed after a shower, smelling of mint gel, but someone else's. She put her hand on his shoulder, as usual, gently. And each time, he barely visibly tensed up. She was pulling her hand away as if she had been burned. Why is he pulling away? Why does he always have his phone with him? Why does he seem to stay one step further in his soul than before? Her doubts were like a shadow. First small, then growing. But most of all, she was tormented by the feeling that he was lying. Not in words. Behaviorally. A look that hides something important. She noticed a new detail, he began to look into her eyes only when he himself started a conversation. And when she asked, he looked away. It's a small thing. But in a marriage, little things are everything. One night, she woke up to a silence that was not natural, but intense. Evan lay looking at his phone. The screen shone on his face, making his features look sharp, as if they belonged to someone else. She heard a barely audible laugh. Quiet. The smile on his lips is one she hasn't seen in a long time, directed not at her. And then she asked. Who do you correspond with? Evan flinched, locking the screen too abruptly. With a colleague for work. Lie. She heard it right away, not by the words, but by the pause before them. But she didn't say anything. She just turned over on her other side. And for the first time in the years of marriage, she quietly cried into her pillow. Not out of jealousy. And from the feeling that he was losing it, slowly, like sand between his fingers. Marilyn is an obsession that grows. While Clara was silent, Marilyn stopped being silent at all. After several meetings, she started demanding more. You're leaving too soon, she said one day, grabbing him by the collar of his shirt. I'm not a toy, Evan. He tried to explain that he was married, that he needed to go home, that the children were waiting for him. It's not my problem, her voice was low but sharp. If you're here, it means you want me. Don't pretend to be a saint. She laughed at his indecision. I was angry if he took too long to answer. She could call him on her work phone, even if he asked her not to. When they met, she wanted more. More time. More attention. More power over him. She sent messages late at night. Where are you? Why don't you write? Is she there? Do you miss me? Sometimes, photos. Not explicit, but too intimate for just a colleague. He deleted them immediately. But it's too late, they've already stayed in his head. She was jealous. Strangely, mercilessly. She said once. You don't love her. If you loved me, you wouldn't come to me. He felt cold. Don't talk about Clara like that. Oh, how noble, she chuckled. You come to my bed and then defend her honor? She approached him like a predator. You belong to me. You've already made your choice. Evan felt a blow in his chest, a moral but painful one. Has he made a choice? Or had he been dragged in? He no longer understood. Marilyn began to show aggression when he tried to distance himself. I won't be a secret in your life, she said. I am not satisfied with the role of the second. He turned pale. What do you want? She smiled slowly, predatory. Everything. And for the first time, something dark flashed in her eyes. Obsession. The thirst for destruction. A shadow that grew faster than Evan was willing to admit. The two lines converge. While Clara woke up crying at night, convincing herself that nothing was happening, Marilyn pressed harder, demanding from Evan. Get away from her. Survive from home. Tell her the truth. Admit that you're mine. Evan wasn't ready for this. He thought he was in control of the situation. But the situation controlled him. Clara felt that someone else's energy had settled in her house. She didn't know whose face that shadow had. But she could feel it coming. Meanwhile, Marilyn was planning her next move. A move that will destroy any remaining semblance of stability. The first wound. The first clue is an accident, which is not accidental. It happened on a weekday evening. The children were already asleep. Clara was washing the dishes when she heard the sound of an incoming message. Evan's phone was on the table, a rare occurrence. He usually didn't let it out of his hands or kept it in his pocket. Clara didn't want to look. She was honestly fighting with herself. But the screen flashed, and her gaze automatically fell on the notification. Message from unknown. Did you tell her? The punch. It was as if someone had squeezed her heart with their fingers. The blood froze. The breath was gone. She stood there, her hands soaked in foam, staring at the screen that had become a knife in her back. His fingers twitched. She wiped her hands and carefully, with almost shaking fingers, picked up the phone. She couldn't unlock it. The password has been changed. When? She didn't know. But even one message was enough to turn passive anxiety into fear. A minute later, Evan came in, smelling of someone else's feminine perfume, which Clara already hated, although she did not know its owner. He saw the phone in her hands. And he turned pale. What are you doing? What is it? He asked softly. She looked up, and for the first time there was no trust in them. I think you should explain that. He came up quickly, grabbed the phone, too aggressively, too nervously. It's for work. She was silent. She looked at him directly. And for the first time I saw in front of me not my husband. And a man who's hiding something. What kind of job do you have to tell her? What is it? She asked softly. He turned away. He always looked into her eyes when he was telling the truth. And never when he was lying. Tears stung my eyes. But she held on. Evan. Are you cheating on me? He froze. The shoulders are tense. The jaw is clenched. Too fast, too abrupt, too soulless. Clara, I'm just tired. Don't start. You're overreacting. She felt like she had failed. He didn't just lie. He threw in her face, you're not normal. It was the first open wound. Such that it is no longer overgrown with just silence and hugs. And for the first time, she realized that she wasn't afraid of an answer. She's afraid of the truth. Marilyn, when the shadow begins to speak. Meanwhile, Marilyn started a new game. Without warning. Without logic. Out of pure jealousy. She created a fake account, small, empty, with a photo of someone's hand and no names. And I started subscribing to Clara. Watch her stories. Like old photos. But the main thing is to choose only the pictures where Evan is. That was the beginning. But not the end. One day, Clara received her first message in direct. Sometimes those we love wear masks. Without a name. Without a photo. Without subscribers. It was getting scary. At first, Clara thought it was spam. But a couple of days later, the second one came. Some smiles are not for us. Take care of yourself. She got goosebumps. She was looking at the avatar of an empty profile. And she could feel someone breathing behind it. Not evil. No. It's cold. It's like someone's watching. And enjoys it. Marilyn was smiling, holding the phone. She saw Clara reading the messages. The viewed status was like adrenaline for her. She wanted to sow doubt. Destroy a marriage not only physically, but also psychologically. Do you deserve it? She whispered to herself. Let's see. How strong it is. Her fingers were running across the screen. You feel the changes, don't you? Do you feel like he's not with you anymore? And pressed send. Conflict. Clara was sitting in the bedroom at night, closing the door so that the children would not hear. The phone lay in front of her like a bomb. She couldn't tell her friend, she was ashamed. I couldn't tell Evan, it was scary. She looked at the empty messages from an unknown account. And in her head there was one thing. Who is this? Other women. Colleagues. Random people. Or is she? The unknown she whose perfume Evan now smells of. Someone else's. The one who steals her husband. Clara didn't know Marilyn's name. But I could already hear her footsteps, invisible, soft, but ominous, next to me. That night, she tried to talk to Evan again. We're moving away, she said softly. You've become different. I want to understand. What's going on between us? He was looking at his phone. Her words seemed to annoy him. Nothing's happening, Clara. Stop being dramatic. She felt her heart crack once more. It's as if his phrase is a knife that he inserted unknowingly, but still deeply. You're lying. It was the first time she had said it out loud. I can feel it. You don't belong to me anymore. Something took you away from me. He leaned back on the sofa. To breathe. And again, leaving. From her. From questions. From the truth. When he went outside, the phone vibrated. Marilyn. Well? Evan gripped the phone so tightly that his fingers turned white. He knew everything was falling apart. He's trapped between two women. Between lies and the truth. Between desire and duty. And Marilyn, like a shadow, was ready to move on. Much further away. While staying in the house, Clara felt for the first time that the enemy was already inside her life. And this enemy has no face. For now. The first investigation. Doubts that keep you awake. Clara was sitting in the kitchen, holding a cup of cold coffee in her hands. My heart was pounding, and my fingers were shaking, as if they were trying to take the cup away from my lips. The phone was lying nearby, vibrating again. But this time she didn't look at the messages. She understood. It's someone else's game again. She remembered all the little things. Delays at work. Cold glances. Short answers. Constant phone screen down. And for the first time, there is a solution. If the truth is hidden, it must be found. I can't keep guessing anymore, Clara whispered to herself. I need to know. And she began to act. A call to the office. She dialed Evan's department number at the company. My heart squeezed at every ringtone. Good afternoon, she said, trying to sound calm. My name is Clara. I'm Evan's wife. I wanted to clarify one point about his work schedule. The voice on the other end was kind at first, but then it became clear, something's not right here. The office staff started talking vaguely. Evan. We seem to have project delays. Nothing obvious, but enough to make an alarm light go on in Clara's head. She wrote down all the details, noting the dates and times of delays, departures, and meetings. Everything coincided with the nights when Evan came home late. Something's not right here, Clara thought, and the feeling of foreboding grew. Social media search. The next step was the social network. She remembered the strange messages, the mysterious account, the subtle hints. Having created a fake profile, Clara began checking comments, likes, and stories. And then she came across a picture. The photo that changed everything. Evan was on it. It's not just Evan at a corporate party. Evan is with a woman. The woman was sitting too close, leaning towards him. A hand on his shoulder. An easy, intimate pose. And Clara saw the woman's face. For the first time she really understood that this was not an accident. My heart stopped. My hands were shaking. My throat was dry. Marilyn. She gasped. The name sounded like a sentence for the first time. The first shock. Clara was standing by the window, holding a printed photo. The rain behind the glass smeared the light of the lanterns, creating dark spots on the floor, like shadows of future events. She remembered all the signs she had tried to ignore before. Delays at work. Strange smells of perfume. Cold looks. And suddenly she realized that she had allowed a shadow to enter her house, while she thought it was just her husband's fatigue. The first shock was not from the betrayal itself, but from the fact that it really exists, and that now it must act. I can't be silent, Clara said softly to herself. I need to know everything. And for the first time in a long time, her heart wasn't shaking with fear, but trembling with a willingness to fight. The first open conflict. Meeting. Clara was waiting at home. The house was quiet, the children were asleep, the kitchen was cleaned, the light fell softly on the walls decorated with her drawings. Everything was perfect, just like before, but perfect only from the outside. She was holding a printed photo of Evan and Marilyn in her hands. Her fingers clutched the paper as her heart pounded as if it wanted to burst out of her chest. When Evan arrived, she didn't look at him right away. He took off his jacket and said something mundane. But Clara was silent. She waited until he noticed her gaze, which was as cold as steel. Evan. She began softly. We need to talk. He felt the tension. I felt that I couldn't get off with phrases and smiles today. About what? He asked cautiously. About what I found. Proof. Clara put the photo on the table. Evan froze. His eyes widened, first in surprise, then in fear. He began, but the words stuck in his throat. Clara leaned forward, her voice trembling but firm. You come home tired and cold. You're hiding your phone. You're cheating. And now I have the proof. He tried to look away, but Clara held his gaze. Look at me. Don't hide. Tell the truth. The first cry. Evan couldn't stand it. It's not what you think. Stop it. He shouted, raising his voice for the first time in a long time. It was an accident, it was a mistake. A mistake? Clara asked, stepping closer to him. Are you calling this photo a mistake? Are you calling hiding this from me a mistake? Her hands were shaking, but she didn't let go of the paper. Her eyes were glistening with tears. I tried. I do not know what happened. He sobbed, opening up completely for the first time. I didn't mean to hurt you. Clara's voice became cold, almost cutting. You've ruined my house, my nights, my trust. They stood facing each other, their breathing overlapping, their hearts pounding so hard that it seemed the walls could hear them. The first tears. Clara knelt down, clutching the photo, tears streaming down her cheeks. Why? What is it? She whispered. Why me? Why our family? Evan knelt beside her. He hugged her, but carefully, he was afraid that she would push him away. Tears flowed from him too. I broke everything. He whispered. And I do not know how to fix it. Clara looked up at him, and for the first time in a long time she saw his true face. Not deceit, not confidence, not a smile. Only fear, guilt, and love. But love was no longer the same. Now it was painful, tortured, mixed with hatred and resentment. The beginning of change. This meeting changed everything. For the first time, Clara stopped just suspecting. She saw that the mystery had become clear. That cheating is not just an accident. That the fight is just beginning. For the first time, Evan realized that he couldn't go back to his old ways. He couldn't hide anymore. Every excuse was now powerless. And while they were sitting on the kitchen floor, hugging and crying together, their family's world would never be the same again. The first shock, the first cry, the first wound, it was the start of a real struggle. For the truth, for trust, for himself and for his family. Shadow games. Marilyn is gaining strength. Marilyn knew Evan was broken. Not completely, but enough to manipulate him. You have to choose, she said at their next meeting, her voice soft, almost affectionate, but her eyes cold. You're either with me or you're staying in her world of lies. She threatened subtly, but palpably. I can tell Clara everything. I can get you fired. I can leave you with no way out. Evan understood that none of her words were empty. He felt his freedom shrink every day, as the shadows in the house grew longer and darker. And every call, every message, is like a little knife. Are you asleep? Are you thinking about her? She sent at night. She knows, but she won't guess? Huh. The second message a few minutes later. He couldn't stop her. He couldn't tell anyone. He was afraid. Clara gets into the action. But Clara wasn't going to sit idly by. She made a plan. Quietly. Carefully. Systematically. First, we need to collect evidence that cannot be disputed. Then, to observe, without engaging in an open confrontation. And finally, prepare for a decision that leaves no chance of justification. She created a fake profile to track Marilyn's social media activity. I've been following all the likes, comments, and subscriptions. Acting like an invisible observer, she gathered pieces of information that formed a picture of a complete threat. Intersection of lines. Marilyn, unaware of Clara's strategy, increased the pressure. If you don't meet with me today, she wrote to Evan, I will make your life impossible. Evan was broken. He didn't know which way to turn. Meanwhile, Clara knew more than he did. She started comparing all the dates, nights, messages, photos. She realized that she could predict Marilyn's next moves by using her own behavior against her. You think you can control me, Clara whispered to herself, but I'll learn to play your game. She knew she had to act quietly, without emotion, with cold logic. The first fake strategy. Clara organized a small test. She sent Evan a fake message from an unknown observer, which implied that someone was watching their correspondence. Marilyn's reaction was instant. She wrote more, pushed, demanded, tried to manipulate, tested Evan for obedience. Clara wrote it all down. Screenshots, dates, reactions. She knew it was a weapon. Marilyn's every move was recorded so that indisputable evidence of manipulation could be shown at the right moment. Psychological pressure. Marilyn became more aggressive, threatening to reveal everything she could. At work. She hinted to colleagues that Evan was hiding his personal life, creating small intrigues. In social networks. She secretly commented on Clarina's photo, creating disturbing hints. In personal correspondence. She demanded immediate submission, put emotional pressure on Evan. Evan was trapped, but Clara was already in control, albeit gradually. She understood that Marilyn was walking on the edge by herself, leaving open evidence. Her strategy now is not aggression, but waiting and fixation in order to prepare for the moment of catastrophic disclosure. Clara became cold, reasonable. Fear gave way to determination. Every message, every movement, every look were now elements of the game. Everything will be revealed soon, she thought. And then the truth will hit with such force that no one will be able to ignore it anymore. Marilyn did not know that the shadow she had created was now being observed. And that Clara became the master of this game. Sentence. Clara's house was quiet, almost sacred. The children were asleep, and the light fell softly on the walls, reminding them of their former lives. But now everything has changed. Clara was standing at the table, with neatly folded screenshots, photos, and correspondence in front of her. Each piece of evidence is a piece of the mosaic of betrayal and manipulation. She could feel the tension inside her gathering into one giant fist. "It's all over today," she whispered. The moment of exposure, Evan came home late, tense again. He saw Clara waiting for him with cold determination, and for the first time he felt fear. "Evan," she said softly, but her voice was firm. "I know everything." He froze. "What? What do you know?" he muttered, trying to figure out what had happened. Clara put in front of him photos, screenshots of correspondence, evidence of late-night meetings, messages from Marilyn, hints and threats. Evan saw the truth. Complete, tangible, unjustifiable. It's not what you think, he began, but Clara raised her hand. "Stop lying to yourself, Evan. I've seen your every move. Every secret. Every excuse." And for the first time, he realized that he couldn't hide anything anymore. Marilyn is losing control at that moment. Clara did something Marilyn hadn't expected. She exposed some of the evidence in Evan's work chat and a secretive account so that colleagues would see hints of manipulation, but without revealing the names. Marilyn is in a panic. Her game is collapsing, control is disappearing. She wrote threatening messages to Evan. "You betrayed me. She must not know. This is my victory." But Clara was one step ahead. She recorded every message, every action of Marilyn. "You decided to push too late," Clara thought. "Now it's my turn." The first decisive move, Clara walked over to Evan. "Do you choose your family or continue her game? What is it?" she asked bluntly. He realized that any excuse was pointless. He saw Clara's cold face, her tears, her determination. And for the first time, he admitted that his love for Marilyn was an illusion that had almost destroyed everything he held dear. "I choose you," he gasped. "I have destroyed trust, and I will fix it." Clara nodded, but did not smile. Her heart was still broken, but for the first time there was clarity. They could fight on. The consequences. Marilyn had no power anymore. She tried to resist, but now her threats were empty, everything was written down, everything was proven. Evan realized that the truth couldn't be hidden. Clara realized that trust can be restored, but for this you will have to work on yourself, on relationships, on the house. And for the first time in a long time, the house was quiet again. The silence was no longer empty, it was filled with a new determination, an opportunity to start anew, with a clean slate, but after the storm. New level. Silence and reflection. It's been a few weeks since that explosive evening. Clara's house came alive again, not in the same way, but in a new way. The children were laughing and playing in the living room, their voices sounding like the music that Clara had long wanted to hear. Evan and Clara spent their evenings together. No secrets, no phone screens, no evasive words. Every word, every look is now filled with attention and awareness. "We've lost a lot," Clara said one day, holding his hand. "But I believe that we can build a new one." "I've broken a lot," Evan confessed. "But I will improve. I want to be with you, with the kids. I want to be someone who deserves you again." New borders. Clara has learned to protect herself and her family. Evan's phone is now shared, with trust rules. Work evenings are transparent, without lies and secrecy. Social networks were no longer an arena of manipulation. Evan realized that trust is not just a word. It's every action, every little choice. Marilyn gradually disappeared from their lives. Her accounts are blocked, calls and messages are ignored. She remained in the past, in the shadow, which is no longer able to influence their home. Restoring trust. They started talking about their feelings openly. About fear, about pain, about what everyone has been through. And for the first time in a long time, Clara felt that her husband was there not only physically, but also emotionally. "I'm afraid it will happen again," she said one day. "Me too," Evan admitted. "But now we know how to stop it. We are together." And this shared awareness has become their new pillar. The little things that become important. Clara was decorating the house with little things again, painting pictures, baking cookies with the children. Evan helped her, laughed, hugged her without any trace of tension and fear. Every little thing is bright and familiar, but now filled with a new meaning. They were able to keep the family together, despite the betrayal, and became stronger together. Hope and catharsis. The world has not become perfect. The shadows of the past still sometimes appeared in memory, but now they were checkpoints, reminders of how far they had come. Clara looked at the children, at her husband, at the house, and for the first time in a long time, her chest felt light. The pain, fear, and anxiety were left behind. There is a life ahead that they will build together, with honesty, love and awareness. And it was a true catharsis. An emotional explosion of pain, after which it became easier to live, love and trust anew. The shadow that remained. Marilyn was sitting in her small apartment. The windows were covered with curtains, the light was dim. Her phone was silent, and social media no longer brought the excitement she was used to. "They're happy," she whispered to herself. The voice sounded empty, almost like an echo. She flipped through old messages with Evan, photos, screenshots. Every piece of evidence was no longer a weapon for her, but a reminder of her own mistake. "I thought I could control him," she said aloud. "But everything I've done has destroyed me." Her hands were shaking, but now not from anger, but from the realization that all the intrigues, manipulations and threats had not given her happiness. They left a void. Marilyn thought about Clara for a moment. The woman she was trying to break became stronger. Her strategy, patience, and love proved more powerful than any threat. "They won," she said softly, and for the first time her face softened. The light of the setting sun filtered through the curtains, flooding the room with a soft golden glow. Marilyn looked out the window and realized. She was left alone, without a game, without control, without power. And this realization, bitter, cold, but pure, became her lesson. A lesson that destroying someone else's happiness never leads to your own, and that true strength lies in honesty, love, and trust. Marilyn lowered her head, took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, she felt that the path to self now begins not through manipulation, but through loneliness and awareness. The shadows of the past are left behind. New life. It's been a few months. Clara and Evan's house looked different. Not perfect, not without cracks, but really alive. Light filtered through the curtains, filling the room with soft morning light. Children were playing on the living room floor, laughter filled the space. Clara was sitting on the couch with a cup of coffee, smiling, watching them. Evan came over, hugged her from behind, and rested his chin on her shoulder. "Good morning," he said softly. "Morning," she smiled. "Everything is calm." "Yes. Everything is calm," he agreed. "And it's thanks to us." Their hands intertwined. Not just a habit, but a symbol of the trust they have regained. Every little gesture was now filled with attention and awareness. Clara looked at Evan and said, "We've been through a lot. But now I know that we can do anything. Together." He nodded. "Together. And no more secrets." The sun was shining brightly outside, and there was a warm silence in the house, a silence filled with love, trust, and a new beginning. They both understood that the past was painful, but it made them stronger. And now every day was a chance to build a real, honest life, without deception, without intrigue and without the shadows that once tried to destroy their family. And at that moment, Clara realized that she was happy again, and that happiness was strong, mature, built on truth, love, and mutual respect. Light and life. Early morning. A ray of sunlight broke through the window in the living room, falling directly on a small toy left on the floor after the children's play yesterday. It was an old stuffed fox, a little dusty, slightly battered, but still soft and warm. Clara sat down next to him, carefully picked up the toy, and smiled. "Do you remember when we bought it?" she said, looking at Evan. He nodded, smiling, "Yes. She survived through everything, just like us." They looked at the children who were laughing in the next room, playing carefree. Old fears, intrigues and manipulations were left behind, like dust that a ray of sunlight scattered in the air. Clara put the fox on the shelf next to the other toys, in a prominent place. Symbolically, it remains a part of their past, but it no longer affects their present and future. Evan put his arm around her shoulders. "We've been through everything," he said softly. "And now we can only look forward." Sunlight bathed the room in warm gold. Clara took a deep breath and for the first time in a long time felt that the shadow of the past had dissipated, and there was only a life full of light, trust, and love ahead. At that moment, everything became clear. They were together, strong, mature, and no shadows could separate them anymore. And the plush fox, a small, quiet symbol of their victory over the storm, now reminded them that even after a storm, the sun comes. The path through shadows to light. Clara and Evan began the story in an idyllic home, with children, love and mutual support. Their life was calm, cozy, filled with happy little things, dinners together, games with children, warm laughter and attention to each other. But gradually a shadow appeared between them. Cold stares, delays at work, mysterious phones. Evan became infatuated with Marilyn, and cheating became regular. She was subtle and psychologically thoughtful, full of manipulation, pressure, and threats. At first, Clara tried to ward off suspicion, but her intuition gradually unwound a tangle of worries and doubts. The first real evidence, photos, messages, fake accounts, turned Clara's inner doubts into a clear understanding of betrayal. Marilyn increased the psychological pressure on Evan and on Clara through social media, pushing for conflict. But Clara gradually took control of the situation. She spied, collected evidence, and built a strategy to protect her family and bring the intrigue out. The first open conflict culminated. Clara presented Evan with evidence, Marilyn lost control, Evan was confronted with the truth for the first time and decided to restore trust and protect the family. This emotional outburst was a turning point, painful, but necessary. The following months were a time of recovery. Clara and Evan were building new boundaries, talking honestly about feelings, fears, and expectations. Marilyn was left behind, her intrigues no longer had power. Gradually, trust was restored, and love became mature and conscious. A year later, the family was living a new life. The children were happy, the house was filled with laughter, the little things created comfort again, and the parents were holding hands with confidence in the future. The symbolic finale was a sunny morning with a plush toy, a small detail, a reminder of the storms of the past that they had survived, but would no longer allow their happiness to be destroyed. The story of Clara and Evan is a story about pain, betrayal, psychological games, and manipulation, but also about the power of forgiveness, honesty, and determination to restore trust. They came out of the shadows of the past stronger, more conscious, and together, ready for a bright, real life.